Thank you, Joe.
And we are live finally on Odds Property Investors. We bring the big names and we have the big fun. I brought the big stutter there. How you going, Tyron? What's happening?
Oh, good. The big names. Good. Look, what could be wrong? I live in Australia. I live in a beautiful house, beautiful wife, beautiful kids. Fantastic. And I'm on Oz Property Investors Live. So thank you for inviting me.
Wow. What more do you want? If anyone out there that's listening, what more do you want? Probably a good investment.
Lots of people are listening.
Most people want a beautiful investment property as well. So we can chuck that on the list. How do we go about getting it? That's the question.
Is that the question?
So how are you going, Joe?
My internet just crashed. I'm well, mate. I'm fantastic. I'm ready for this. Tax depreciation, man. Tax depreciation. This is the man. He pretty much founded in Australia the whole tax depreciation world. It doesn't look like it. It looks like a spring chicken out the womb. But apparently he's helped found this thing. But I was having actually we're having this pre-conversation with Tyron last week. And I realized you can make people focus so much on making money, but they never think about they think about saving money and making money. And then as property investors, because there's this thing called depreciation, and the problem is it's used by spruikers and spammers to get people to buy house and land packages and off the plan apartments that over the long term are not good at investments. So as normal everyday investors, we just, okay, cool. Depreciation's a bad thing. We're not going to think about it, but you can make a massive difference. And if you can save 30%, last year I spent probably, 30 minutes, an hour on tax. But if you can save 30% of your income, you should probably be spending more than 30 minutes if you can make 30%. So it should be, it should be 12 hours a year that you're spending on tax, or 20 hours. But we just don't spend enough time on it.
Joe. Why are you spending it yourself, mate? Teamwork to make the dream work.
Well, that's what.
But you're right. It does get embezzled or emblazoned in the spruiker market, which does give it a bad rap. I often on forums where it says, "I don't buy this because of the huge depreciation." And let's get this straight. We all know that land appreciates and building depreciates, right? That's given. And that's good. But it's also, once you've got that investment property, you want to depreciate it as much as you can, because what happens is when you buy an investment property, that depreciation value is in the property itself. You just need someone like me to work out what it is. Every other deduction that you get, whether it be strata management fees, property management fees, you have to fork out money for it, right? So the only one deduction that you get that you've already paid for is depreciation. And secondly, it's the only deduction, right, that is can be arbitrage, or what's the word where it's it can be different values. You can have different values. I could value someone differently to someone else. What's that word I'm looking for? But anyway,
it's subjective.
Subjective. It's a subjective deduction. Every other deduction is based exactly upon the decimal points that you get from your invoice. So it is an important tool that investors should use. And hopefully tonight, I'll be able to give some people a couple of tips that if I save one person money, I'll be happy with the end of this program.
So if you think you can save money, make sure you drop money in the comments, because maybe that'll give Tyron the inspiration to do it. So I'm gonna reel us back in. So thanks for everyone for tuning in. So we are tonight going to learn the lessons as well as quantity surveying from the $26 billion man. So we'll tell that story as we're progressing throughout the podcast. It is High Rise Harry, though. Spoiler alert, Harry Triguboff. So Tyron Hyde is here tonight. We're going to unpack some of his story and also what he's seeing in where people are purchasing, which he doesn't actually say is all that relevant, which is interesting. And then we'll talk to the lessons from Harry Triguboff. I think there's 7 of them that we're going to go through, but you've probably got 400 value add. And then you've got the 2,000 property depreciation quantity surveying tips. I think you've got 20 actually, but we'll go through many of those. So it is going to be an amazing session, heaps of value. I'm excited, saving money, making money, and learning lessons. What more could you want, people? So quickly, just to introduce Tyron, if you don't know him by now, the father of depreciation. Some people are going to be offended by that, but that's okay. Offended because they're going to claim they are. The father or mother, whatever you want to say. But you have a degree in construction economics. Gee, that's you must be the likes of all party. But you are the fellow. This is what you are, the founder of the Australian Institute of QS Quantity Surveyors. You began at Washington Brown in '93, and now you're the sole owner. So, you just out-survived you haven't been there long. That's almost. I've been alive longer. But no, you have a passion for property depreciation, and I've seen you, and you've got that 10 with Ty podcast, which is amazing as well. and you've got the book called Keep Claiming It, which I think is epic. So what did I miss, Tyron, there? Did I miss anything? You're a Bulldogs fan as well.
I'm a Bulldogs fan, and we're going okay at the moment. What do you miss? There's a couple of comments there about me being old, which is okay, and I am the founding.
A lot of backhanded compliments there. A lot of backhanded compliments loaded up.
I've been after ID, but thank you very much. But yeah, you missed. I guess you missed that. This is Keep Claiming It. There was a book before that called Claim It, and then what happened was the laws changed in 2017, and I had to rewrite it because it all became irrelevant. So instead of Claim It, I called it Keep Claiming It, and I went on that bandwagon.
There you go.
True story.
There
you go.
Tyron, you just face the mic at you, like the actual physical mic, because it's like super like noise. Yeah, and then tilt it towards you.
For those who don't know, we are live. This is we're not filming this. We're not AI.
We're actually in the podcast. Like, because nothing worse when you have a podcast in, you're doing your walk, and then like the audio sucks, and it's like, oh shit. So I don't want to be that.
There's a program for that. It's called Adobe Podcast, and it just makes it all beautiful.
There you go. Well, he's already adding value in the tips. So
yeah, exactly. That's one of your depreciation tips.
Podcast tips.
Let's get into it.
So the first question we ask people before we jump in the sponsor, what I want to know is what got you into quantity surveying? Why did you want to get into property?
Sure. So, well, when I was 17, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I actually wanted to be an architect, but I didn't actually get the marks to be an architect. So someone said to me, why don't you do this thing called construction economics at UTS, which is a combination of maths and building. And I love both of them, right? So it was a perfect fit for me. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I did what all good young Aussies should do. And I backpacked around the world for 3 years. So I deferred for 3 years. And the number one thing I learned from backpacking was that I never wanted to work for minimum wage again, right? So I came back and I finished my degree. True story. But this, in the final year of uni, I was 24 in 1993, 24. And I went to uni and I felt, oh my God, I'm so old to get back into the industry. I'm 24 and I've got to get a start. So I went to uni one day, and on the columns on the walls were all these signs: cadet wanted, Washington Brown. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so old. So I went and stole all the signs on the columns, and I was the only one that turned up for the job. So, so I got the job. That's how I got into property. But in the final year of uni, in 1994, I wrote a thesis on property depreciation. And the laws changed in 2017. They said, if you don't know the construction cost of a property, we'll accept an estimate of that construction cost as a property investor. I'm like, woohoo! I just wrote a thesis on this. So I went and I left Washington Brown and started my own company called Property Depreciation Pty Limited. And I literally started the industry. I drove from building site to building site because no one knew about this back then. And I'd educate the developers and I'd say to them, hey, by the way, there's this new tax ruling. You can help sell properties to investors if you just show them my free marketing sheet that they can get X, Y, Z in deductions. And that kept going and kept growing. And then my business partner, my ex-boss said to me, why don't you come back? We'll merge the companies, which we did. And then my side grew so much that I bought him out. And that's why I look 25 yet own a company that's been around for 45 years.
I think that figure gets younger each time you say it, because I think last time it was you look 32, but you're in charge of a company that's good on you. Benjamin Button of Property Depreciation. No, so I wanted to know though, what was so successful about your company, your sort of segment of the company? How did you get sort of better than the other side? I guess it's
the first mover advantage, because people weren't doing it back then. Initially when I first started as a quantity surveying, what you've got to understand is there's many different fields of quantity surveying, not just this field that this forum might know, which is the depreciation side. My original side of quantity surveying is more a traditional role, where you are the project auditor for the bank. So the bank will engage you. If you want to borrow $10 million to build a development site, the bank doesn't go, here you go, here's $10 million, right? They'll get an independent estimate from a quantity surveyor like me, and it might say $10 million. And then every month you go out and you do a progress claim. You go, okay, the footings are all poured, the ground slab's poured, release $1 million. So you're the bank's auditor. And that's what I grew up to, the first 5 to 10 years. That's what I was doing. So I was a bank auditor. So I'd release a report to the bank and say, release $1 million of that $10 million. They would then release that to the developer. developer to the builder, and the builder to the subcontractor if all things go according to plan. And that's where I first bought my property. My first investment property was by doing that. I was a project auditor on a development site in Balmain, and the builder went broke, right? And before the project started, I bought an apartment off the plan off him for $1,000. I put $1,000 down. Now I know it's really rare to do that today, but I put $1,000 down on this apartment, and then the builder went broke, and then I helped the developer project manage the job to completion, and he didn't end up charging. It took 3 years. By the time I settled that unit, the property had already gone up like more than $100,000, so I didn't have to put any more money in, right? So I turned that $1,000 into $100,000. As a return on investment over a 3-year period. It's the best deal I've ever done. And that got a taste 100%. For me, learning about leverage and everything like that. And that was like and remember, I started with no money. So for me to go from like $1,000 to $100,000, I'm like, I just won the lotto. I literally did. So that was the gold mine.
Dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you feel about off the plans now, Joe? I know you love off the plans. So. Yeah.
How do I feel about off the
plans?
Well,
you know how much you love house and land and off the plan. You tell people not to do it. So no, I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule, but.
Like if I could get a 40 grand commission and also not screw anyone's life up, I would absolutely do it. But unfortunately, you can't buy a good off-the-plan apartment, make a $40,000 commission, and also get a good investment property. Unfortunately, like top 1%, there are absolutely deals out there that you can go and get a house and land package or an off-the-plan apartment and do that kind of stuff. But I don't know. What are
there are some good developers out there, though. I've worked with many developers. There's definitely some bad ones as well, which is why we got out of that cost planning industry, because it is a very, how should I say, cutthroat industry. Can be really, because what happens if you're controlling the funds on a job and the job goes bad, right? Everyone blames you. The bank will blame you. The developer will blame you. The builder will say, go and see that quantity fund. So we'd literally get death threats saying, you better release funds, right? And I'm like, you know what? I've done this. I'm done. I'm 15 years done. I won't name with the entities, but it can be pretty cutthroat in that quantity surveying world, believe it or not. Not so much in depreciation, but in that real world.
So can you just give us a run through what is tax depreciation? And I guess we're going to be talking mainly about tax depreciation from a normal residential, and we'll touch on a bit of commercial, but like what is tax depreciation? Why do we care as property investors? Why should we care?
But we should care because it saves you money, pure and simple, to make your investment property more affordable. It can turn a negatively geared property into a positively geared property. And so what depreciation is, in summary, is you can claim a deduction for the wear and tear of an investment property against your taxable income. So just like if you're a tradie and you buy some tools from Bunnings, you can claim as a depreciable item, or a car for Bunnings, you can claim the wear and tear of your investment property against your taxable income. And as quantity surveyors, what we do is we split it into two components of the report. There's the building, which is the structure, the brickwork, the concrete, all that stuff lasts over 40 years, right?
Right.
The other stuff that's for it more is important is the plant and equipment, which is the ovens, dishwashers, air conditioning. As I look around my house at the moment, the TV, that stuff wears and tears quicker, so you can claim it faster, which makes sense, right? But the big thing that's occurred in the quantity surveying industry over the last 30, 40 years was in 2017 when they changed the laws. And they said, if you buy a secondhand property, even if it's 1 day old now, you can't claim the depreciation of the oven, dishwashers anymore, even if it's 1 day old. You can still claim the structure, the brickwork, but it has to be brand new or commercial or non-residential for you to claim that stuff now. So there's some big stuff we can unpack with that. But it certainly has been a game changer for our industry because none of us saw it coming, and it makes a big difference to the investment equation. Because I'll give you an example. If you had two houses side by side, right? And I know it doesn't happen that often, but it can happen that you've got, and say that one is brand new and it's for sale for $1 million, right? Next door is for sale, it's 1 day old, and this is going to happen, and it's worth $990,000, something like that. The one that's brand new, unfortunately, I don't say unfortunately, but because it does promote people going to new property, is that you'll get a $50,000 deduction over the first 10 years more than the one that's next door that's 1 day old. Now, that is bizarre in terms of the tax law and how everything else that manifests in terms of how you treat depreciable assets. And it's just narrowed down to this secondhand property market, and it's pretty silly. Literally today, we had a client that thought they bought something brand new, right? So it's still under construction when they bought it. When it got to settlement, we looked at the contract, and the agent says you're buying a brand new property. And if you're buying something off that's not complete, you would think you're buying a brand new property, right? But what it was, a resale. Now, this is something people need to be warned about. If you're buying an apartment or a house that you think's brand new, make sure the vendor is a PTY limited company. Because if I buy it off, say you're a developer, Joe, and I buy it off you, right?
Yeah.
If say you're a developer, I buy it off you, it's halfway completed. Then I sell it. Then I sell it to you, Jeff, and you settle on the same day when it's brand new. I haven't even gone into the apartment. The tax law treats it as secondhand because
someone else has
didn't pay GST. Because you bypass the tax law treats it as secondhand because the first purchaser who sells it doesn't pay GST. So even though no one has gone into the apartment, opened the door with a key, you can't claim depreciation. And that poor person that we dealt with today was mortified. He'd been told all his whole journey that it was a brand new apartment. Right. So the tip there is, I think it's one of my 20 tips.
That's
make sure
that's number one. There you go.
I think it is. But I guess
so. What is it?
If you are going down the brand new path, make sure you're going to get the depreciation on it. Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting on that because it really goes to show what having the right sort of people in your sort of car or boat or whatever vehicle you want to choose. Because for me, that is the kind of question I would want to be asking my conveyancer or solicitor to make sure that they're checking the contract. Because and it's I suppose a question we don't think about, but it's a question that I'm sure anybody buying a brand new property, is going to be asking anybody from now. So that's absolute gold. What I reckon we'll do, we should throw it to a first sponsor. And then I want to hear about your wisdom, because you bought and sold a few properties. Is that one you made 100x on your sort of deposit, your $1,000 deposit? So let's talk to that after this break.
Sounds good.
Let's get it done. Let's get it done now.
Hi all, I've got a big problem. This is the Policey Property weekly sponsorship ad. Except today, I've got nothing to sell. And this is because of you. Due to all your kind words, comments, amazing feedback, and sincere compliments about my newly released commercial property investment course, the Commercial Property Institute, I realised today that due to the Facebook algorithm, many of you, in fact, the majority of you, still may not have heard about this yet. So I'm going to do 3 things that no other course provider would even dare to do. Let's start with number 1. I've taken out 5 lessons of the course and put them in the link that's being dropped into the chat right now. This way you can see the value in the course, and you can see the production, and you can see for yourself the depth of the insight that we dive into. Every other course provider hides everything behind a paywall, and you only find out if it's valuable or not when it's too late. Not me, you're going to see 5 sneak peek lessons from the course from which you can make an informed decision about whether this is for you or not. Now, number 2. To further prove to you that this course will transform you from being a total beginner into an elite commercial property investor, I'm going to show you a picture of me before I discovered commercial property investing. And now, after I've discovered commercial property investing. Alright, you finally got your Steve without a beard shot, so it's time to get serious. Let's talk about number 3. And this will leave you without any doubts. Everything I know about commercial property is in this course. Every tool that we use at Policey Property is in the course, and it's delivered in a learn at your own pace online course at $4,997. But you're not going to pay that. In fact, you're not going to pay a cent if you're quick. I've decided to extend the free offer to OzProp Investors Group until the end of June. That's right, no cost, no credit card, lifetime access until the end of June. All you have to do is click the second link here in the chat, and it'll take you to the page where people normally pay $4,997 for it. At this page, type in the discount code OZPROP and instantly get the Commercial Property Institute course for free. No catches, no gimmicks, just a limited time only offer. So click the link right now and get your instant access free. Thanks again for the amazing feedback, and I look forward to seeing thousands of commercial property moguls in the near future. Cheers, guys.
That's funny.
Who doesn't love commercial moguls? Well done. So,
I like the no beard shot he had on there. That didn't look like him. That wasn't him.
Yeah, it made me feel sick.
It's impressive.
Hi, Steve.
So I want to know, Tyron, before you, what are some sort of top tips you have from your own, and you can sprinkle in some of your investing journey, but what are some key things you learnt along the way, along some of the properties you bought?
Yeah, because you must have some pretty good access to like property, like amazing property deals, like great, like you must see where the hot spots are, where the not spots are, and yeah, okay.
I certainly have access to a lot of deals, and I've certainly had a lot of clients that have bought the same thing and had the same mantra the whole time. That's something I could talk about a little bit later. They just have a system and they don't go past that. For instance, some of the developers that we deal with, it doesn't matter whether it's good times or bad times, what interest rates are. They have 10 to 15-year plans. They'll buy, sites that go for 10 years. It doesn't matter what the market macro is doing. They know by the time they start the work on that job, good times will follow, bad times will follow, good times will follow, bad times. By the time they actually develop, it might be good times. But for my personal journey, so I started, because I had no money when I was growing up, I had to have a share. So that $1,000 property that I bought that was with my flatmate. So we both made that return, but she wasn't in property. So then the next two properties were, again, all shared because, again, I didn't have much money. So one was with my brother, one was with my girlfriend at the time who ended up marrying. So we did that twice. The only thing I'd say about that, which I guess is pretty relevant in today's market because it's so hard to get in, is that I didn't have any contractual arrangement with them. It went well. It didn't have to, but I would now highlight to people, if you're going to go down that shared path, have a bit more cred than or a bit more savvy than we were. But I guess when it's your girlfriend, your brother, you think it's going to go well, but it doesn't always happen, does it? So that was my first.
Probably the other consideration. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say on that point where you're sort of buying with somebody else. It may not have been the case when you were buying, but you've got the challenge of when you're extracting equity, and you've also got it's factored that whole debt is generally factored as your debt as well. So that can hamstring. So good point. But yeah, go on. What was the next thing you?
So I get the other thing. So that was with those first three, but I bought 22 properties over my life. I've worked out the other day, but I don't own them all now. But the couple of things that from my investment strategy is, I know this sounds simple, but I've tried to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of my most successful investments was a unit in Bondi, which became my principal place of residence. I bought that the day after September 11. Now, I don't know how old you guys are, but in 2001, let me tell you, on September 12, there wasn't a lot of people going to spend $1 million on a unit in Bondi. Right? There wasn't a lot of people running around. Hey?
In 2001 for a unit
2001. Yeah, that was 860,000 to be honest. 860,000 was in 2001. Oh, it's a nice unit. It was a nice unit. It's in Ben Buckler.
You want to be.
But there's only two people at the auction at that point. Because it's September 11. It was like people were like anyway. But why I bought it, or why I was really interested in it, was that it was only 3 in the block, right? 3 apartments up at Ben Buckler, had views all over Bondi. And the next 2 blocks next to it both had 6 units in it, right? The same size land. And I'm thinking, at some point, a developer's going to hit me up for this. They're going to amalgamate the site, blah, 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 blah. Come now, 3 years later, they did, and they paid double for what they want. So I'm always looking for the ratio of land to the purchase price is one. That's a bit of a no-brainer for me, right? It doesn't matter if it's $1,000 unit.
Unit path, don't buy in a block of 10, 100, 200.
You can still buy apartments with good land value, right? And the thing was, because in those units that I bought then was 860, the same 2-bedroom unit next door was selling for roughly the same price, right? Just because people weren't valuing that it was only a 3 block as opposed to a 6 block on either side. They just thought it's a 2-bedroom unit. For me, that's a good tip. If you can buy a high ratio of land for the similar price what next doors are selling, right?
Yeah.
And you get a far greater ratio of land. Sorry?
How do you do the math on it?
It's pretty simple, Joe. You divide it by...
I looked at the land area, right?
Yeah.
And said, well, the land area is there's 3 on this 450 square meter block. Next door's got 6 on very much similar, exactly the same land area. Something's got to give here, right?
Yeah.
And so it worked out. At some point, there was a land that increased, not the buildings depreciating, that's for sure. So the other thing I do is I look at replacement cost. Now, that's going to be a bit niche for people, but because I know construction costs, right, I can look at a property and say, well, the property that I'm sitting in right now, I won't give you numbers, but let's say I paid $5 million for it. I can look up the land value of the council records, and we all know they're generally low, right? And it was $3 million, right? Or roughly $8 million. I knew to replace this building, this house, which is only 6 months old, it's going to be $4 million minimum, because only 6 months old. I can tell you the build cost. So I'm going, well, hang on, there's $3 million plus 4, that's 7, and they're selling for 5. Something's wrong. Something's got to catch up at some point, right? So I'm looking in my head, what are the replacement costs of these properties to the purchase price? Because what happens is, when you buy, if a property is 40 years old, right, and say it's an industrial building, and say at some point the building will depreciate all the way next to zero, and the land value will catch up to it, right? That's what happens in all properties. A building depreciates. When the property is brand new, you should have a higher land content to the building, right? There should be a land content, and the building should be pretty close to the purchase price. But as time moves on, the land goes up, and the construction cost and the build price comes down. What's left after your purchase price? You follow me so far?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So as time moves on, the building becomes less and less and less. So, but what you can do and what you can look at is if the building component is still relatively high in the early days, well, then you've got it can be a bit of a winner. Like, how do I explain it? So, for me, I'm always looking at how the construction costs relate or replacement costs relate to the purchase price of a property to make it worthwhile. Now, that's because I'm a quantity supplier, right? So I want a decent size construction value if it's quite new. So for something that is a unit that you might pay $200,000, the land might be $200,000, the building costs $400,000, and you're paying $1.2. That ratio doesn't work for me, right? I want the land and the building as close to the purchase price as I can. And the older the building gets, the more the land should be higher and related to the purchase price, because the building's going down. That's something that I do because I'm a Queensland and I know what the building costs and replacement costs are. So I always factor that into my equation.
So is there a simple way that we can, I don't know,
come
up
that?
with a equation? Like how do I do that as a normal everyday guy?
Yeah, so that's a bit tricky because I'm a quantity I know what the costs are, right? But I will try and think up a way that I've actually got something further down on one of my tips, but I think it should be something that people consider, because the greatest point that people lose money is where the land is, say, 10%, the building price might be 30 to 40%, but the purchase price is triple those two combined. You have a far greater chance of losing money when those two are squashed. Yeah. Whereas you're buying something where there's a huge land content, it might be 10 years old, and if you add up those two replacement costs plus the land and you get the purchase price, you're not going to lose much money. And I'll go through a tip later. I'll go through a tip later where I show you how people can I can guarantee you how you'll never lose money in property. It's hard to say, right?
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Well, let's
guarantee boring you a little bit. You're not getting not getting a money back guarantee for watching the show, people, but because it's free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll get your money back.
It is a little bit complicated, but in my back of my mind, because this is what I've done all my life, one of the things that I do take into consideration is the replacement cost of the building relevant to what you're paying for it, right? If I'm looking at an industrial building and it's selling for $3 million and the land value is 2.8, but it's got a functional building on it that's got another 10-year life, right? That I can have 10 years of lease. That to me works, and they're out there. Trust me. Stephen Knight finds them. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
oh, really? You got some
we're chatting before you came on.
Well, I do his work with you.
Yeah, he does. Mates are ages. So Tyron, that's a great tip. So I want to know one more thing, and then I want the billionaire lessons, because that's what we've built that as the show is this. But I want to know what's something that you like keeping it simple. What is a simple tactic? Like the depreciation or the land value is fantastic. I love that tip. I'm going to have to watch that back and rethink about it and put it into formula myself. But what's something that somebody, if they're watching home now, what can they apply and use it simply? What have you used in your investing as well?
So you mean for the for my property depreciation tips or investing tips?
Investing. So I'll give you an example. So for me, if I'm going straight to a market, if I don't know, let's just use Rockingham, because Rockingham's still or even let's say Rockingham, WA. So my first thing when I'm looking to understand an area, I'll jump on realestate.com to go to the suburb profile, and I'll look at, okay, what is the median days on market? What is the price move? What is the yield? All those I want to understand that very basic lay of the land, and then I'll sort of dig a bit deeper into the fundamentals, like your infrastructure, all those good things. What's something that the everyday investor can land content is amazing. What's something like that you've used or think about?
What I do, so it's not so much those things that I look at. I'm always, again, looking at the purchase price, construction costs, that stuff, right? That's in my wheelhouse. But if I was an investor, if I was advising my daughter, for instance, to start in this game, the first bit is to get the area right, if you ask me. You've got to start with a decent where you're going to buy. And for what I've seen, if I look at my Facebook feed, apparently there's only 3 suburbs in the whole of Australia that you need to buy in, and I can download a report and find out which they are. And funnily enough, they're selling property in those areas, people. So that is not what you do. So I would do the complete opposite of that. How I would start is I would get Terry Ryder's reports. I'd get Matsu, I can never pronounce his name, Michael Matsuwitz's reports. I'd get SQM, Matsuwitz's. I'd get SQM's reports, and Harrington White's, what do you call it? The property clock, right? And I would create a heat map, and I'd see which are the 4, which areas are they all saying are at the bottom of the cycle or about to begin or approaching the bottom of the cycle or just starting. And they're all 4 agreed on one area. That's where I'd start. And that's where I'd find someone who's an expert in that area. But I would not listen to 3 boom suburbs, and I wouldn't listen to anyone else, to be honest. I'd make my own decision to get to that area first and then find the best people to find properties in that area for me. That's what I would do if I wasn't in this industry. Just start with 4 independent pieces of advice, create a heat map, and go, you know what, I might buy there. That's just my tip.
Yeah, that's a solid tip. I mean, the thing is, you can't take any one thing into isolation, because there are, like the property clock is a solid one, but it's like often very much wrong. But if you're throwing that in conjunction with 3-4 other sources, and 3 other sources where they all align are like, okay,
and
cool,
are independent and not getting paid for that advice, not making money on me whether I go there, which is more important if you ask me, right? That to me, you've got far more chance rather than people that are getting paid or have associations with different industries to get you into that area. I think that would be the strategy I would tell my daughter to be independent, right? And then use a good buyer's agency. I'm not saying don't use buyer's agency. I'm just saying the first port of call is where. And the first port of call for me, the where, is independence. That would be my first port of call.
Yeah, that's great. And also, actually, because there's not going to be too many locations you're going to pull from, it's also going to be your price. Like, what are the chances? Like, you're going to have 5 locations that overlay, but then there's only going to be 2 that fit your brief. Like, because what's your price, your yield requirement that the bank needs? Great, I've got $650,000 and I need a 5% yield. Well, that's not going to suit for 3 of them, but you've got 2 of them. Boom, that's even narrower, and then become an expert on those areas. Go hard.
That's right. Exactly. I agree.
Solid.
I'm going to bring this question up before we get into the billionaire.
You can use that.
Can you use the rates notice to reverse calculate land value and guesstimate the building price? Is that a method you've thought about or heard about, or is that a no?
It's a good question. Thanks, Chunk. Look, the land values. Firstly, there's 2 things here. You've got land value that you get from the rates notice. And they're generally a bit lower than what the market will do.
And how often are they updated?
Every 2 to 3 years, depending upon where it is. But they're late. They can, and the funny thing is, they can be so out of whack sometimes.
Like Queensland, I just got a rates notice. I was like, no, that doesn't fit with reality.
Yeah. That's right. They're generally lower. That's right. So you don't. But and in Victoria, they have the land value, then they have the capital allowance value, right? And some people think that the capital allowance value is exactly what the build cost was, but it doesn't work like that. So you've got a purchase price, you've got the land value, but they just deduct the purchase price via the land value and give you a capital allowance value, but it doesn't work like that. It's not what the real value is. So to answer the question, no, you can't just get the purchase price and deduct the land value and be the build price. It doesn't work like that, because the construction costs that we do as quantity surveyors is we work out what it costs to build today, and then we factor it back into what it costs in the year that it was originally built. And we have to work that out. So when we work out those original costs, we literally price it in today's dollars. And there's a thing called the building price index, which is like a CPI index, but it's a basket of goods in the building industry, which is labor, tools, machinery, right? It's called the building price index. And so we factor it back from today's dollars, might cost $1 million to build a house, to 22,000, it might be 500K. And that's where your starting price is in terms of what you can claim in depreciation laws.
Yep. Right.
And I guess how do I get the
building price index? It's part of our. You actually got to log into the Australian Institute of Quantity Surveyors. But what I can tell you is that actually building costs have gone up 63% in the last 4 years. Do you believe it? Which is quite bizarre. Which is quite bizarre because in June 2021, we had that quarter had 67,000 starts Australia-wide, building commencements. This quarter, last quarter, 38,000, right? So nearly half commencements. So if we're thinking there's going to be a massive amount of supply coming on, it's not happening. And you would think, because I don't know about you guys, but I remember economics at school. There was a supply and demand equation equal price, right? You would think if there's half the starts, building prices would start coming back because there's going to be labor onto the market, right? But it's not happening. It's still forecast that building prices are going to go up because all the good trades are going to bloody infrastructure projects. So there's less building work going on in terms of resi and commercial, but it's all going to infrastructure.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize you had such a finger on the pulse on the supply side of things. So what are you seeing like in the
to a certain degree?
Yeah. Well, you know more about it than most. Yeah. What states are you seeing as the most supplied, like chronically undersupplied markets out there? Like who's struggling the most?
Look, we really only do the commercial and this stuff for developers in Sydney, to be honest. So we're not really focused on nationwide. So I can tell you now that we've got the biggest developers in Sydney, but I can tell you now that what their boots on the ground are saying is they're holding off tendering. They think the prices will come back because of this supply demand equation of labor, right? So they're actually holding off tendering and putting off jobs because they just think it's got to come back at some point. There's so many developers out there. I can anecdotally tell you, 3 of my uni friends who've developed all their life have given up developing. They've gone, we're going back to building because they can't make it work with the building prices that they are.
What's the difference between developing?
And you think about there's China builders going broke a month, right? It's not going to be an easy fix to supply, even though the Min's government here is saying, you can build 6 stories all around train stations. Getting it done is going to be a whole nother gamut. And I know what the impact's going to be for prices, but you can't think it's going to ease them.
It's not going to go down probably. No. So the difference between building and developing, Joe, is building you're actually doing it for somebody else, or developing you're the person who's then got other people to help you build it.
Yeah. But there are builder developers as well, right? And if you ask me, actually, one of my clients said to me once, I would never become a developer if you weren't a builder first. And the reason is, as a quantity surveyor, you can see how many, like we used to project manage jobs as well. You can see how pear-shaped it can go between the builder-developer relationship if things go wrong and the amount of variation fights you'll have. It can just blow your budgets out like just so badly. So
I could geek out on developing there, but there's been some solid tips. Like I love that land sort of construction sort of value. That is really if I could.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to dig in a little bit because I feel like there's something there that an everyday investor can take advantage of. So how much does what like if I'm to build just a normal everyday house, because I look at properties in like for Townsville, for instance, right? Like you can buy a property. Actually, I just bought a property in Northern Queensland for $430,000.
Yep.
How much is it going to cost to actually rebuild that house? It's going to
that
cost
much.
me.
That's right. That's why it's a good buy. That's right. That's and if it's and this happens all the time. And that's something that I'd be thinking, Joe. Like, how much does it cost to rebuild that house? Right? Ring up the local builder. Go, how much would it cost to replace it? If it's only a couple of years old, that property, right? And you're already buying it near the build costs, right? It's going to be hard to lose. And that's one of the tips I'm going to give you soon. Because there is a tip which
as I said, I just bought this property myself. It's got a piece of land. So I'm going to subdivide, sell off the land, and then build. What would you do? Would you build out right now, or would you wait a little bit until building calms down?
Okay, so again, like you guys would say, there's so many different markets in Australia. You can't, especially with the construction costs as well. So you really have to look at the individual market to say, especially, I'd even say more in terms of construction rather than even just what the selling is. You'd have to really look at, because as part of our institute, we recognise that construction costs vary all around Australia, and a lot of that has to do with transportation of materials. Right? If you're building in Hamilton Island, right, it's going to cost you a shitload to transport the materials on barges to get there. So one of the factors are the location. We actually have a system where we go, okay, well, Sydney might be 100 basis points. Wollongong might be 105. So everything's 5% more in Wollongong. When you start getting to where you said, what did you say, Rockhampton or something, you're talking like 50, 60, 80% higher than it is to build in Brisbane. So, and that will also then come down to supply and demand of, there might be a mine being built there. So they're taking all the trades. So it's really hard to answer, would you build now or what? So you've got to wait. You've got to speak to the local builders and get the boots on the ground information there in terms of construction costs as well, not just purchase prices.
Yeah, because this is actually one of the things that I'm seeing in certain pockets where people want to renovate. And we got a quote where a guy gave us $30,000 to renovate. To paint. $22,000 to paint a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom place. And I was like, ridiculous. $22,000. How much paint? How many layers? Are you doing 12? Like,
I could tell you why. Because when you start getting into, this is the hardest thing as quantity surveyors, is pricing these renovations, pricing a Paddington Terrace as a renovation or whatever. It's the stuff that a lot of people don't want to do, and so they just it's their meal ticket. You know what I mean? Like they'll just triple the price. If it comes off, it comes off, and that's what happens when you're talking small little renos. And that's, from our point of view, really hard to price. Whereas if we've got some developers and all they build is 100 blocks, 100 units, 100 units, 100 units, we can get right down to the finite number of what the cost is. But when you're doing little renos in Paddington, or like, you know, it's funny you say that. I had a quote. I renovated a building in Bondi once. I had a quote for $300,000 to replace the whole of the building, renovation for the windows, render, paint, new doors, everything. It was $300,000. I got a quote just to do the rendering for $500,000. You know, it's like, as a quantity surveyor, how do you go, well, I don't know. If this area, it's really supply and demand of how much, you know, what will it be worth? Which is hard. I can see why these things go for 2 hours. We've got to 40 minutes, and
we're up to 40 minutes. We haven't even touched on the Triguboff. So okay, let's wheel this thing back, because I love a story. I love a good story. All right. Good property investor. How the hell did you end up? So who is Harry Triguboff? For the people that don't know, who is this? You know, Triggy.
So Harry Triguboff. Harry Triguboff has been a client of mine for 27 years. Harry is the CEO of a company called Washington Brown. He's been repeatedly ranked the richest person in Australia. His current wealth is $26 billion. To put that in perspective, if you were to merge Suncorp Bank, which owns Amy, Vero, Dingle, API Insurance, with Suncorp Bank, and you merge that with the AMP Bank, you still haven't reached his net personal wealth of $26 billion. That only adds up to $24 billion, right? He's last 4 years, Oxfam estimated that he made $1.5 million per hour. So when Harry invites me to lunch for 2 hours, I'm shit scared he's going to send me an invoice for his time. True story. Anyway,
I think the thing I love about, just to throw, I believe he immigrated in about the 50s. Did he come across Australia?
When I first met him, I'll tell you just a story before I get into some of the things I've learned from him. But it was 27 years ago. He invited me in. Meriton used to do their own depreciation schedules, but they weren't very good at it. And I got
so he's the guy that owns Meriton.
He owns Meriton. He's founder of Meriton. He's a Russian Jew, 91 years old Russian Jew. At 91, he's still building 5,000 units a year. Put that in perspective. 91, still built, and still goes to site every day. And he invited me in, and for the first 20, it was a 30-minute meeting. And for the first 29 minutes, all he did was tell me stories about his life, how he emigrated from Russia to China, where his parents did, because they fled communism and anti-Semitism because he's Jewish. So he grew up in China. And then his parents sent him off to Australia when he was like 17. His first job here was as a milkman, delivering milk in Chatswood. Can you believe? And then he got into building. His first job was building. He was building his own house, and the builder went broke. and he took it over. So that's how he got his taste for construction. And then he told me a story how in the 70s he nearly went broke. Citibank called in all the loans, and they said to him, Harry, we want all the money back. He said, well, what do you want? All these half-completed buildings? No bank wants half-completed buildings. So he finished every building, and he vowed that he'd never borrow a cent again. And to this day, he hasn't. Now, I'm not talking out of school here, but I can tell you, when you see 50 cranes on the sky, it's all cash. Not cash, but probably used to be back in the day. And so at the end of the meeting, he said to me, Tyron, can you help me with depreciation? Just 1 second call. I said, yes, I can. I walked out there. It was raining. I was like, oh, my God, I've just got a lot of work here. And I thought, oh, he's not going to pay me. You know, I've heard these stories, scary. And he can be. Trust me, he can be. He can be scary. But I worked all weekend or 5 days, sending like 300 reports. Next day, I get a courier check back. I'm like, oh, my God, this is like gold. And he's been doing that ever since. So we've had a good working relationship over 27 years. He's a pretty amazing man. But can I tell you a story of like some of the lessons I've learned from working with him?
Well, that's what's the key. Yeah, that's great. You've had so many interactions as well, so you can unpack who he is.
Not a lot of many people meet him. Not a lot of many people get to meet him, especially now. Obviously, he's 91-year-old. But it's funny when I do see him. Because I've been around for so long. It's like he gets his lights in his eyes. Oh my God, I know Tyron. I know Tyron. That's really sweet, actually. Anyway, first story. Let me tell you a story. So I've just written a book. I'm going to share my screen if that's all right.
Go for it. Bring it up.
Here we go. Oops, not stop scan. Present. Okay, share screen. All right. So I've just written a book. Here he is. Can you see that? Can you guys see that?
Yeah,
Can you see World Tower?
Yep.
Yes. World Tower.
Okay, so this is World Tower. So I've just written a book called Claim It at the time. And Harry invites me to lunch. And so this is World Tower in Sydney. And he kept the top third, as you do. This is the largest residential tower in the Southern Hemisphere. But see where that arrow's pointing? There's a little level up the top there, which he kept for himself as a whole floor. It's like having a whole floor of Centrepoint Tower. And he invites me to lunch. I go up the top, up to the 75th floor, and the butler opens the door. And the butler opens the door. And I'm walking around this whole floor apartment building, and I'm thinking there's something wrong. There's no bedrooms, right? There's a kitchen and bathroom, and it's just purely used for entertaining, the whole thing. I'm like, wow, okay, that's interesting. He tells me to sit down next to him, and there I am with my original book, Claim It. I'm a bit younger there, admittedly. And you can see the top of that book, left-hand corner, a little staple, because it hadn't gone to press yet. So I said to Harry, Harry, I've written a book called Claim It. He goes, very good, very good. That's how he talks. I said, Harry, it's all about property tax and depreciation. He goes, very good, very good. I said, Harry, there's a chapter in there about you called High Rise Harry. He didn't say very good, Jeff and Joe. And so I said, I think it's only fair that you read it first before it goes to press. And so I gave him that chapter, and it was literally silence at the table because there's always hanger-oners or an entourage with Harry. And he read it, and then he finished the final page. He looked up at me and goes, very good, very good. And I wiped that sweat off my brow, let me tell you. Anyway, the book gets published, and I'll stop sharing my screen now. The book gets published. And I sent him the first copy off the printing press. And I said, dear Harry, thanks for all your work and support, blah, blah, blah. I sent it to his EA. A week later, I get a call from his EA. Harry, Mr. Triguboff would like 6 more copies, thank you. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Why? Well, he wants to know what all his he wants his executive team to know exactly what you do. Okay, all right, I can live with that. So I sent it off to him. And then this is where the 1%er kicks in, right? For the next year, every week he'd invite me in and ask and tell me something new about depreciation, right? For 5 minutes, bang, rapid fire. And I had to explain to him. Now I'm thinking, because he's the 1% guy. I don't know if you've read this book by James Clear, but it talks about making those 1% incremental changes that can have a compounding effect on your business or life. Now, Harry's 1%ers, if he's doing this to me, getting the thirst of knowledge from everything, every trade that he has, what's he like in terms of doing it for his architects, his engineers, his finance planners, blah, blah, blah. His 1% is off the Richter, right? So it kind of it made me motivated to get as many 1%ers for him as I could. I have studied my tax law on this area, XYZ, if incrementally, right? So that has been a bit of a passion for me to impress him in some ways, and then I want to transpose that to what I do with other investors, right? Because his projects are so complicated, but then if I can bring that down, that 1% down to my client base, well, then hopefully I'm leaving some mark on them. But from a business point of view, it's been the 1% for me has been learning about the tax law, obviously, but also even the SEO. I've learned that I've got to know everything about everything in my business just to make it, I've got to know enough to be dangerous, whether it be SEO, AdWords. So I've taken that away from him. In terms of property, what are the 1% we can do? I'm going to talk about 21% soon after this, where I can say, here are some of the 1%ers that we can all hopefully have a think about, and hopefully those 1%ers might have an incremental change in your cash flow. So that's where I'm going to go with this.
So how much, I guess like there's so much, like what were the key lessons that you learned from Harry that as a normal everyday investor, that an everyday investor can take away? Because building 5,000 towers I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to lie. I'm never going to do it. I don't really care.
I could do it if I want to, but I just don't need to.
I could do it.
I don't.
I reckon.
Well, I mean, you can do anything you want to, but why do you need to?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't want to build 5,000, but what are the more like what are the interesting things that you saw in him that an everyday investor can take away?
Sure. That's I guess when you're talking about someone of that wealth, it is hard to it's whether it's but for me, okay, so for me as an investor, he is the KISS principle, right? He has kept it simple. Now, Harry, with his teams of trades and teams of everything, he could have gone down the path of commercial, industrial, many other different facets of building, right? He's kept it simple, and all he's built is apartments, and he's got so good at it, right? So I've learned from that, from my business point of view. I've started so many different businesses, and I've just gone at the end of the cycle here. I've just narrowed it down, just stuck to what I wrote my thesis on 30 plus years ago, right? I've gone down to due diligence reports, building insurance valuations, you name it. I even created a competitor, realestate.com at one point. And there's my dog. Create a competitor, realestate.com. I thought I could take them on. For the average day investor, what can they learn from that? Okay, if you ask me, focus on the one asset class, right? Like what he has done. Yeah. He has become the best at service apartments. If you become the best at, and I've got clients like this, if you become the best at pubs, I've got many clients like that. If you become the best at storage units, right? When shit hits the fan and there's a fire sale of a pub, who are they going to go to? Someone that understands that whole market, right? Or they're going to go to someone and put it on the market and hope that someone comes, right? So if you become the best in that asset class, you link to all those people, and you link in those circles, you might get that best deal. So sticking to your knitting would be the one thing that we can take away from him.
And I think for me, what Joe says quite regularly is he talks about he uses the reductionary sort of method. He takes a lot of stuff off his plate. Like he doesn't look so much at house and land. He doesn't focus on units. He doesn't look at, I mean, not that he doesn't, but usually he sort of focuses on what he wants to look at, which is sort of good quality properties that have decent amount of land with them. And I tend to think a lot of people sort of, they focus too much. They want to do rooming. They want to do Airbnb. They want to develop. They want to renovate, but they haven't actually learned one particular aspect, or even taking a step further, becoming an area expert. And looking at, if you go and sort of understand the pockets, the hotspots versus the not spots of that particular asset class as well. When I say asset class, type of property. So, yeah.
Do you want me to tell you the final thing I'll tell you about it? Do you want me to tell you? He told me the secret to his success. I'll tell you the secret to his success. He said to me one time, and when Harry talks, he often ends his sentences with a higher intonation, right? On the last word of his sentence. So he said to me, he says, "Tyron, do you want to know the secret to my success?" Now, I'm not going to say no, Joe. No. Okay, Harry, what is the secret to your success? He goes, when times are bad, I buy land. By the time I get development approval, times are good again. I'll say that again. When times are bad, I buy land. By the time I get development approval, which in his case is 2 to 3 years, because the project's so long, it could even be longer, times are good again. So what does that mean? It means cut out the noise. Back yourself, right? Good times will follow bad times will follow good times. You see, for someone like Harry, who buys the land, then builds, and then keeps half his stock, right? It's not a question of whether you time the market or have time in the market. For Harry, he times the market, and then he has time in the market. And if you can do that, you've found the Holy Grail.
How do you feel about the current property market right now? Like, what are your thoughts? Because we've not really seen a boom go this crazy. Like, how does this factor into your thinking and feeling around the property investment landscape?
Well, firstly, I'd like to apologise for everyone under the age of 40 because it's so hard to get in the market. I really do feel for you, right? No, seriously, I actually get really shitty when, am I allowed to swear? Sorry, I did. I hear someone of my ilk say something like, oh, you don't know what it's like. When I was growing up, it was 70% interest rates. Well, let's do the maths on that, right? So in 1989, the average price in Sydney was $175K. The average wage was $25,000, right? 6.5 times earnings, right? Today in Sydney, it's $80,000 and $1.6 million. It's 20 times earnings. The other thing to consider is if you get a 10% deposit on $1.6 million, that's $160,000. So you need 2 years of full wages to get the 10% deposit, as opposed to $25,000, as opposed to 10% of $175,000, which is $17,000. You only need 80% of your wage to get to that 10% deposit. The other thing, back then it was now it's like 5% stamp duty. Back then it was 3%. So all those things are conspiring to make it a lot harder, right? Which really sucks. So I guess I say that because I don't know how much harder it can get for people specifically in Sydney. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But then I then counter oppose that with what I talked about before, and that building supply is not going to come to the party anytime soon. Right? So that's really what we need. So it's like I wish I could say things are going to get cheaper, but I just can't, which is really sucks. It really sucks. And I don't know how people. I don't know how someone like who's a nurse married to a fireman can get ahead. It's really, and I've asked this question a lot of my podcasts, and I haven't had one good answer yet, to be honest. So where I think prices are going to go, well, I just can't see Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane coming down. I would tend to be, my gut feel, I'm hesitant on Perth. I don't like the fact that everyone in my Facebook, I'm not here to give you a data analysis of everything about where to buy in Perth or whatever, but I can tell you now, I go on gut feel. And for me, I wouldn't be buying in Perth at the moment because I'm just scared that there's too many people buying there and too many people in my Facebook feed telling me it's a good buy.
Were you buying it back in 2018?
I should have. I went over there. It's funny you say that because I went over there to give a conference at a conference, and this is still going on, but it was a Bitcoin boom, right? And every cab driver was telling me to buy Bitcoin. I went, I don't want to buy Bitcoin. Probably should have though. It probably kept going up. So I don't do Bitcoin.
March of 2020 was a bit bad for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that would have been that buy any asset. That's the thing. You buy any asset. March 2020, the government printed billions across the world. Globally, was printed trillions. Right? Inflation has driven a lot of the market. Okay, cool. So you've learned a lot from young Harry. He's taught you a lot about the game. I want to start getting into some of these tax depreciation tips because
now you're getting me excited, Joe. Now you're getting me excited.
Yes,
Can I share my? You're trying to get me excited, eh? All right, let me share my screen.
So before you do that, let's run this.
Am I sharing the screen, or are you about to say something?
No, yeah, we got to do this thing. You click the share. You
got an ad. You got an ad coming.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make.
There you go.
Here we go. Cool.
Load them up. Let's get tax depreciation, savings.
Wow. You're getting me.
We've already spent the money. The money's already spent. So how do we get the government to give us our money back? Because I'm sick of giving the bloody government my money. Okay.
Great. All right. So again, if you're still this far, thanks for listening in, everyone. So I've come up with a lot of times when I do these talks, we talk the basics and we go, okay, so you can claim bricks at 2.5%, blah, blah, blah. So these slides I've just worked on the last couple of days. I thought, what are 20 things that are going to be of interest? They're not all going to be hacks. Some might be just a did you know, and some might be a warning as well. But some are hacks. So let's go. So my first one is I told you before that you can't claim depreciation on secondhand properties for any plant equipment item, even if they're 1 day old. If it's an oven, dishwasher, blinds, curtains, all that stuff, floating floors, aircon, except if you buy the property in a company name, right? They have totally left this out. So you can buy a property in a company name and still claim the depreciation on all those things. Now, don't get me wrong.
What if there's a trust attached to it? So like,
sorry?
What if it's got a trust attached to it, like ABC company as
trustee? So it can't be a trust. It's got to be a PTY limited, just pure, not a trust. It can't be a trust. It has to be just a pure PTY limited company.
Damn.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. They saw you coming there. But still, the reason why you'd never do that in the past was because the company, because of the CGT free discounting if you've held it for more than a year, right? But now that was more important when the company tax rate was at 30%. But now the company tax rate, small company tax rate, is 25%. If you buy the property in your personal name and you're on 45% and you sell it, you're going to pay tax at 22.5%, right? Because you get a half discount. So it's not a big difference, 22.5 to 25% anymore. And the other thing is you're going to get $50,000 in depreciation over the first 10 years, roughly, if the property is like within 1 year old, that can offset or that can reduce your taxable income when you need it the most, which is when the property is in its first 10 years, because hopefully after that, your rents rise, etc. So I'm not saying I'm not here to give you financial advice. I'm not here to give you financial advice. All I'm saying is put it into the equation. Does this work for this? Yes, there's a disclaimer. Thank you. Good. All I'm saying is I've been doing this for a long time, and the only argument that I ever had from an accountant saying don't buy it in a company name. Sorry, am I going all over the shop here? Don't buy it in a company name because don't buy it in a company name is because of the CGT free discount. But that's not that relevant anymore. So I'm just saying I'm throwing it out there. All right. That's
okay. What if it's a 1990s property? What if it's the 1980s property? What if it's a 2000 property?
Yes, absolutely. This is the thing, Joe. That all that we can revalue all that plant equipment. They didn't. This is what we used to do. So they've left it alone for companies, right? So even if it's 1990, we can go and go, that carpet's worth. This is what we used to do. So they didn't stop it. They don't say, oh, it's in a company name. It's 1 year old. You can't do it. Or 5 years old, 10 years old. You can still do it.
Okay, so that's a $5,000 a year decision, right? $50,000 over 10 years. So
if the property's like, it can be up to 50 grand, but it can be actually more, but it can be that big a decision. That's right. So you got to factor that in. But even if so, back to that example I told you before, where if you buy a brand new property and the one next door was like 990 or something, and that scenario, remember, I'm just saying, do the maths. Like, it can add up to a significant amount. So, all right, next one. Something interesting. I think it's worth throwing in the equation only because the company tax rate has come down so much, right? It wasn't worth it before, but it's at 2% difference. It might be interesting.
I wanted to bring this up because Robbie's talking about this, and Robbie, you might need to clarify your comment here. Maybe it's a comment or a question. Tax depreciation, time value of money versus CGT discount. Are you sort of saying, Robbie, that you feel that there is an ability to sort of bring forward and sort of use that money from tax depreciation, which ultimately I believe does need to be repaid if you were to ever sell the property? So is that what you mean?
I think you're saying a good thing there.
Yeah, I think he is.
And just on that with the capital gains tax, I was on stage with, I think you mentioned the Sleeping Night conference, and I always get asked that question, right? Oh, but don't I have to pay the building allowance? Don't I have to pay it back when I sell the property? And Steve McKnight was standing next to me. He goes, "Oh, Tyron, let me answer that one for you." And he grabbed the microphone and he said, "I've got a secret to tell everyone." He goes, "I'm going to get you around this law." I said, "Okay, Steve, what's that?" He goes, "Here's a tip how to not to pay capital gains tax. Don't sell your property." I think Steve, can I use that moving forward?
0 to 200 properties to now 4. I think he sold a few, Mr. Steve McKnight.
All right, next one.
Way to do it.
Next one?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, do it.
Low cost.
Can you see my screen below cost there? Yep.
I can see it.
This is something I touched on with you two both, and not many people know this. And I said before, that there's one way I can guarantee you that you'll never lose money. It's this. And that is, there is one way in the Australian tax law where you can get a deduction greater than what you pay for it, and that's only through property investing. How? Because what we do in terms of depreciation of the building is it's based upon its actual costs. Has nothing to do with what you, Joe, or Jeff pay for the property. The building cost is the building cost. And what happens is sometimes the market will shit itself so much that the building price, the original building price, has come below what people are paying for it today. And we do this. I have a system in my database where the report won't get released unless I have to sign off it. And one of the triggers is if the building cost, my quantities of A's are estimating more than the purchase price, it has to get a secret code from me. And it happens more often than you would think. And I can tell you, when we've done those reports in those areas, 10 years later, when we start doing those reports again for that type of area, they've invariably made money. The moment that the purchase price, the build cost is higher than the purchase price, you've found the bottom. I can tell you now. They're hard to find, but they're out there. And I'll just reiterate it. You can get a deduction greater than what you pay for it through property investing. Because when you buy a car, like say you buy a Daewoo, is that a still thing? A Mazda? Mazda 3. Go
on.
A Mazda. But for $20,000, right? You don't ring up Mazda and go, "Oh, what did it cost to build that Mazda?" No, you start your depreciation at the 20 grand. Whereas buildings, it's the only depreciable asset where you have to work out what it costs to build to start the depreciation of it. So,
but it's not the ideal situation, though, is it?
It's what?
Not the situation. You buy a property, it goes down in value, but
it's not right. That's not the ideal property, but it's not the ideal equation at the beginning. But it can be an ideal equation when you're the one buying it at half. The build cost is 500 grand, and you're buying it at 200K. Then it can become the ideal situation, right? And we've seen this a lot. I see it a lot in industrial. I see it a lot in mining towns, which maybe the mining towns aren't the best example. But even like Port Douglas, we're doing reports when the travel industry hit the skids in that area, or Cairns, the prices came down so much, they're half price of the building costs, right? They did recover, but I'm just saying the guaranteed way to find the bottom of a market is when you're buying something that costs twice to build and you're paying half price for it. All right, next one. Okay, here's one here. This one here bugs me. Thing called scrapping. Okay, so I don't know if you know about this, but the government says that a lot of things in your property where you're sitting right now are going to last for 40 years. And I disagree with it. I don't think a lot of things are going. They're going to last for 40 years. The government says when you buy a brand new house or from the beginning of time, that kitchen is going to last 40 years. All right. The other things that
they haven't been the Bunnings then, have they?
That's right. That's right. This is So they purely base it upon the physical qualities of that product. However, it doesn't account for taste. So let's say I bought a property that was built in the year 2000, say. And I had it for a couple of years. And I go, you know what? I want to get a new tenant. I want to rip out that existing kitchen. Now, I just told you that kitchens last for 40 years. If I did that next year, say, that's 15 years. That's 25 years from zero to year 2000 to 2025, 25 years. That means there's 15 years left on that kitchen that could be depreciated, but I've just ripped it out. So where's that 15 years gone? Well, it should go in your back pocket. You should be getting me out before you rip it out. And I put a value on the original kitchen and say, well, it cost 30 grand back then. Shit, there's still 15 years to go. The moment you remove that kitchen, you get a $10,000 immediate deduction. That's the 1%, right? Those and it can add up. Trust me, if you're talking about removing kitchen, bathrooms, you're talking plumbing, electrical, gyprock, tiling, all that stuff. It can quickly add up to a massive deduction that you've never thought about. How's that sound?
So who's the best? I'm just making sure that everybody's lining up their ducks. Are the people to go to in this equation your accountant and your quantity surveyor, or is it your quantity surveyor, or is it your accountant?
Definitely quantity surveyor first. Definitely quantity surveyor who will then this will be a two-stage quantity surveying approach. We'll come in before you demolish it, right? Put values on the things you're about to remove. You then do a renovation, right? We then start the process again. But what people are missing out on, they're not missing out on I've just spent 100 grand on the kitchen. What they're missing out on, I just removed a kitchen that cost 50 grand 20 years ago. There's $25,000 left of that kitchen that I'm not claiming, right? Do you get it? I see you nodding there, Joe. That's the $20,000 that shits me. That's the $20,000 that shits me that people aren't claiming. It's going into Never Never Land. So moral of the story, if you are doing a renovation and you've had the property already for a year or two, it has to be already income producing, and you do a renovation, get Washington Brown out before you do it. And we'll save you some money. Okay.
I want to unpack. What if you only just purchased the property and it's 15 years old? What's the, Brad, you might need to give a bit of context. I mean, I'm missing something.
No, I like it though.
What are we missing?
No, I don't think you need context. I think my advice to you, Brad, would be to wait a year or two. And I'm going to talk about this as one of my next tips coming up, but it has to be income producing beforehand, and it has to be income producing after for you to claim this massive deduction. But that's not that unusual. It's not unusual to buy a property that's 20 years old, have it for a couple of years, go, tenant moves in, I want to get up and around, I want to do a bit of a renovation. It's not that unusual. This is, Brad, that is what I'm talking about. This is called scrapping. Exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right. Next one.
So
this tip's so simple.
$300.
Yep.
$300.
So simple. Okay.
Is this the energy bill that we got? Energy rebate we got given by the government at the last budget? Is that what the $300 is?
I didn't think of that, but it could be. Okay. So this is such a simple one that people don't think about. If you buy something, so if there's just one takeaway, tap this one takeaway. If you buy something for your apartment or your house as an investment property, say a microwave, right? You go to Harvey Norman, you go, I need a new microwave today. Oh, there's one there for $305. Oh shit, there's one there for $295. Buy the one that's $295. Why? I don't think your tenant gives a or knows the difference. But at $295, you get an immediate tax deduction for it. At $305, you got to do it over a 10-year period to get $30. At $295, you get $295 tax deduction. I don't think the tenant cares. Simple.
So anything, any asset that we can put into our property.
Pretty much. Not a toilet, but anything that's removable, any light or anything. Yes, absolutely. Yep. If you're going to Harvey Norman, buy something under $295, under $300. I'll give you another tip on this one soon. All right, next.
Yeah, that's a solid one. I like that one a lot.
Oh, right. So simple. It's so simple. Okay, I'll expand on it. If you like that one, Joe, I'll give you another one on that exact topic. I know it's so simple. Actually, I'll save it. I'll come back to it. Okay,
he's coming back.
I want to hear Joe's question. What is Joe's question?
My question. Really good question. One of my questions is around when should I do these things? So I do a pest and building report. So I buy a property, I get under contract, I do a pest and building, and the pest and building is like, Joe, you need to fix this window. You need to do the gutters. You need to change the hot water system. Yep. It's not broken yet, but it will be. How should I think about that? Like, how should I think about all of these little paint the place? Like, how do I think about that in terms of instant asset write-off versus there's a tenant in there versus there's no tenant in there? Like, what should I do from a tax depreciation standpoint?
God, you know enough to be dangerous, Joe. That was a really, really that was a
solid question.
That was a good, solid question. Wow, boom. Let me answer that I've got a couple of slides coming up on that, but in summary, in a business sense, so you just mentioned temporary full expensing, which I'll go into, so I'll ignore that. But in terms of, which I'm going to talk about next, actually, but in terms of maintenance and stuff like that, okay, and repairs and stuff, I do talk about this in a second, but there's a thing called initial repairs, right? So if you buy a house that's in a dilapidated form and you think, oh my God, that toilet needs to be replaced, it needs to be repaired, and I rip out the toilet. If you buy a property and do it straight away, the tax office will determine that none of it is repair. They don't, because the repair, you got to remember this, for an item to be repaired, the wear and tear need to occur while you own the property. Right? Right? This is what people don't forget. So if you go into a property brand new, and people do this all the time, they go into a property and go, oh, shit, that needs repair. I'll just paint this one wall, blah, blah, blah. It's called, the ATO deems it an initial repair. So it might be worthwhile waiting sometimes if your property needs to be depreciated, if you want to depreciate, just waiting 6 months. And then it's really hard to determine whether the work was in disrepair during the time you owned it or before, right? I will talk about a little bit in a second.
Okay, I feel like I'm still in a bit of thunder here. So I feel like my question is going to be answered throughout. So what's fit out mean?
Okay, so this is one of the questions you just mentioned. So now, which is what you said, temporary full expensing, right? Now is if you own an office and you are considering upgrading that office, do it now. Do it now before the end of the year, because before the end of financial year. The government has before the end of financial year, because the government has extended the small business asset write-off class for up to 20,000. It used to be up to like 500 million, but it's up for small businesses, it's up to 20 grand. So what that means is if you own an office or you're buying an office and you want to do a fit out, and say you spend $200,000 on the fit out, anything that costs under $20,000, which is a lot of things, can be instantly written off. Right. So if you're getting a quote if you buy a little office and you're getting a quote from your carpet manufacturer or your carpet laying dude or person, and it's coming in at 21 grand, get a little bit of a cheaper carpet and go for 19,900. Why? Because you're going to get a $19,000 deduction as opposed to 20 grand 100. You got to claim that over 10 years at $2,000. Quick hack, buy the carpet for 19 grand. And that for a fit out adds up to a lot of things. You're talking boardroom tables, desks, chairs, lighting. Try and get them all under 20 grand.
So these are things like Harry
report recently for 200 grand, right, and the client got $160,000 as an immediate deduction. Right? So pretty much everything they spent was immediately deductible. It's not bad. Makes it worthwhile.
So these are the little tips and tricks that like Harry Triguboff is using, right? From it.
Well, definitely the scrapping is one. He absolutely. Oh, he definitely uses it. Okay, I'll give you one example. The scrapping one that I said before, where if you remove a kitchen, right? I told him one of this tip about scrapping once, and he owns a lot of hotels, obviously. And I told him this. I said, Harry, because hotel lobbies, they're not going to last 40 years, right? Even though the government says it's going to last 40 years, if you actually want to get people into your hotel, you're not going to have a 40-year-old lobby in a nice high-rise apartment, right? It's not going to work. So I said to him, Harry, I said, if you remove all these, the walls and the reception and all this, I said, I'll write a report for you and I'll write off whatever you haven't claimed. Over the next year, he started renovating every freaking hotel lobby. Yeah, and so I just go, oh God, I just created my own work.
Here's one I prepared earlier. Okay.
So yeah, nice.
I want to know this one, because this is something. Does it have to be like? Let's just say you go to Facebook Marketplace and you pick up something, you pick up a desk, you pick up whatever it is. Can you claim on that, or does it have to be the brand new kit and caboodle from
claim on secondhand things?
That's a fantastic question, and this is a bizarre answer. So the first part of this answer is it has to be brand new, but it has to be brand new only for things like ovens, TVs, dishwashers, right? Even if you go to what's that place, the second store place, the good got one of them. Unless there's GST paid on that item, that brand new plant equipment item, you can't claim it. However, the building allowance component, you can go and buy $1,000 worth of bricks that are secondhand, put them into your property because they're not based on purchase price, they're based on construction costs. They can still be old and still be claimable, whereas an oven can't. It's bizarre. But that's so. The answer to the question: can you buy something off Facebook Marketplace? Yes and no. Yes, you can buy a brand new oven. Oh, sorry, you can buy a secondhand oven, but you can't claim it. But you can buy secondhand timber doors and claim them. Bizarre. It's stupid.
Wow.
A good question that's come up here, just on that $300 thing. Another question is related to $300 and a fit out. Is it per item or per sale? So I buy an oven, a dishwasher, and a microwave.
Yep. It's a good question. So, but they're all separately treated. So they'd have to be under $300 each. So
everything's under $300. But
that's like the fit out where I said under 20 grand, right? So we did a report for $200,000 and the client got $160,000 deduction because our report said you had $18,000 worth of carpet. You had a $10,000 boardroom table. All those individual items are under 20,000, and so they could be written off. There was one item.
Oh, so this is why it's important to get an invoice from a builder, a tradie, to break it down. So don't give me an invoice of $100,000. No, give me 20 for a bathroom. Specifically, give me 19,900 for a bathroom, a kitchen, and all of that stuff. So that you can actually write it off.
Definitely in terms of fit out, you're 100% right, Joe. So if you're doing a fit out, we often get it. The more detailed, the better, right? And the more detailed, the greater deductions that you will get as an investor, because we'll be able to go down to item by item and extract them and put them into categories where they depreciate faster and get the most bang for your buck, right? So yes, unfortunately, a lot of people come to us with one invoice, $200,000 for the fit out, right? Yeah. That's okay. We can break it down. But I'll tell you what's better, if that builder has gone through every item and broken it down 1,000 items, right? That's where we go.
Okay. Right, what do we got? Because I feel like we're on number 6.
I think I ticked on this one before. I think you raised this the other day, Joe. You were excited about this one.
Yeah.
So it is undeniable now that commercial property or non-residential has a greater depreciation benefit than residential. And that is purely because what I said before, the laws didn't change when it comes to commercial property. It's only residential, okay? Commercial brand new versus residential brand new, not much difference. Exactly the same. It's only when a residential property becomes one day old compared to a commercial property that's one day old where there's a massive difference, right? So with a commercial property, we can still go out and go, even if it's if it's a second sale, we can say, as part of that purchase price, you just spent 50 grand on the carpet. We can't do that in residential anymore. It's like you get zero for that carpet, sorry. But the structure of both buildings still can be claimable. It's just the commercial. And we're talking big numbers here. As a ballpark, again, if you were to buy a commercial suite for $1 million and a residential apartment for $1 million, you're going to get 50 grand more in depreciation over the first 5 years, which is kind of handy when you want it on a commercial property than you will on a residential property. So it is something to factor in. And the reason they didn't change it, in my view, was because the property council is too powerful, right? The residential lobby markets, lobby groups aren't anywhere near as powerful as the property council of Australia. So
businesses can potentially sort of impact and influence potentially far greater, I would imagine, given the money they potentially put into campaigns. Maybe. Who knows? Commercial versus resi.
All right. So the next one is brand new. Similar scenario. I know you guys don't like brand new, and that's each their own.
I like if I built it, but not so much if somebody else is selling it.
I like being the developer. Like I like being the builder, but it's like it's wholesale versus retail. Like if I'm buying the land and building the property, absolutely, I love it. But I'm not going to advertise it to investors saying that this is an investment paradise when it's in fact it's not.
I think you mentioned before about the selling fee that you got offered. I got an offer once. I won't name the company.
No, I don't get any selling fees. I do not get any selling fees. I do not take commissions.
You're saying
no, that's what I'm saying. So I got offered by a major project marketing firm, because I've got a big database of investors, obviously, because I've got a lot of clients, right?
Yeah.
12% they offered me on the sale price. 12% to sell to my database.
Imagine if that's $1 million apartment. That's $120,000.
And plus on that top, plus on top of that was their fee. Obviously, they're not doing it for a charity.
Yeah, they're going to make 20, 30%.
Cool. I wanted a snapshot and put it on bloody Facebook and go, buyer beware. Look what happens in this industry.
You might disappear if that happens.
Yeah. You got to be careful of that stuff.
No, right?
So what do we need to learn about? Because buying brand new is, you can do it.
Buying brand new is you do get the maximum depreciation you get. They didn't change the laws for buying brand new. I think I've touched on this a couple of times, so it's a no-brainer. You can get more, but then you've got to weigh up all those other things that you factor in, like, are you paying too much, all that stuff. So that's just an FYI, that one. Okay, I don't know if you guys know this, but did you know that if you own a property overseas, you can claim depreciation on it? We do amazing amount of work all around the world. A lot of it's in the UK, admittedly. But if you buy a property overseas...
In Australia, though, you can claim depreciation on an overseas property in Australian...
Yes.
But is that only if there's a tax treaty, though? Or?
Yes.
That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
So all you do, because their income's coming back to Australia, they're doing a tax return here. So even though the property's in the UK, we're basing their depreciation reports on the Australian tax law.
It's less ridiculous now. Well, I said it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It's now becoming less ridiculous now that they're paying tax in Australia on the income.
That's right. They bring it back. So we do it all around the country. Like a lot of people go there, become expats, and then move back, but they still keep that one property. So, and we do a lot of it because we've got there's a couple of accounting firms out there that all they do is specialize in expats, and we've got a close ratio. But that is something that is worth noting. If you own an apartment in New York and want me to inspect it next week, I am free. It's a joke, guys.
Well, actually, that's a question to ask. Do you, as a quantity surveyor, do you have to inspect? Like, should you inspect the property? Like, should an inspection be done visually, physically? Or do you not need one physically?
Okay, so when the laws changed, we used to, and every other firm used to inspect every property, because we used to be going out to every residential property and revaluing the plant and equipment, working out how many square meters of carpet, lines, etc. We inspect probably 60% of properties now, every commercial, industrial we do. But there's some residential properties where we say to the clients, look, it's not necessary. We've already got the costs. Like if Meriton, for instance, gives me the cost on every job, which they do, me going out there 6 months to the new purchaser is not going to save them money. It's not going to change that oven that's in there. So we look at the property and go, oh, this one we've already got the cost. We don't need to inspect it. We'll pass that saving on to you. So rather than saying to all our clients, every property has to be inspected, we prefer to say, give us your property details. We've got the property costs on so many buildings that we can pass that saving on to them. Because that's what we're really looking for, is the original construction costs. That's what we do as quantity surveyors in this space. And we've got it on a lot of buildings. So why charge someone to go out and see a property if we don't need to? That's our version. All right, next. Free. Here you go. I don't know if I'm going to do myself out of a job here, but I'm going to tell you how to get a free report.
Oh,
interested? Okay. So if you buy a brand new property, there is a law, and as I said before, I've come up with 20 things I don't think a lot of people talk about, but there is actually a section of the law. So if you're buying a brand new property, hit the developer up to get a free report. Under the law, he has to give you one. Right? Because how it works, and no developer's going to tell you this, and probably quantity surveyors aren't, because they want the work. But I actually think we should be encouraging people to go to their developer and get the original cost, because the law says that when a developer builds a block of land or develops a site, he's got the cost, or she could pass that on to the first purchaser. And in theory, what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to get passed on down the line. But if it doesn't start right from the beginning, it's never going to be right? So here's the tip is, if you are buying something brand new, the developer has an obligation to give you the construction costs. So start there and don't pay for it. Hit your lawyer up. Save yourself some money. Quick 1% hack that one. Okay, solid. This one's a little bit, hey, solid?
Oh,
solid.
Okay. Yeah, sinking.
Okay, this one here this one's going to be a little bit complicated. This is Bondi. I've actually worked on this project. But, okay, so do you know when you're, and this happens a lot around, I live in Clovelly, this happens a lot around here, but obviously buildings in coastal areas, they get concrete cancer, water damage, right? So we do a lot of work where we go, and then the strata body will raise money, put in the capital works fund to do that repair and maintenance work, right? If this is stupid, but it's the law, if there's no money in that fund and you have to raise the money as a special levy, right? So say I had to put in $100,000 as a special levy, because the money wasn't in the sinking fund. That $100,000 can only be claimed at 2.5%, even though it's a repair, right? However, if the body corporate had got together for the preceding year and raised 25 grand per annum, right, and put that in the sinking fund, then started the work, they would get $100,000 deduction, not 2.5 grand, right? Because the money was already in the sinking fund. Isn't that stupid? Even though it's the same work, same money, but could be 1 year later, but because the strata plan or body corporate had a plan to put that money into the sinking fund, they got it as an outright deduction.
There you go. So I suppose that's making sure that you're keeping on top of your minutes and your body corporate if you do own one of these.
The problem with that is owner occupiers don't care. They don't want to put the money in. So you've got to balance. If you're only the one investor in that body corporate, good luck getting everyone to say put the money in. But it is worth knowing. It's certainly something that can make a huge difference, especially on these coastal areas where we see this all the time. All right, next. Okay, we talked on this one before, but this is repairs and initial repairs. I know for a fact the ATO are cracking down this year more than ever on people claiming repairs incorrectly or correctly. And I can tell you as a fact, two of my staff members have both been audited this year, and the ATO put out a ruling saying we're cracking down on repairs. And two of my staff members this year, last month, have both been audited on the repairs they claimed in their property. Luckily, they had Washington Brown do their report and they went through okay. But number one thing to be wary of is initial repairs, which I said before. If you buy a property and you repair it straight away, no matter if it looked like a repair, it's not a repair. It's an initial repair. So be wary of what a repair is and what it's not. I'll give you a couple of examples of what a repair is and what's not. Okay. So a repair would be if I had a hot water system and I got a plumber out and he fixed it, right? That's a repair. If I get a plumber out and goes, I can't fix that, I've got to put a new one in. That's not a repair. It's a capital improvement. I'll give you one more example. Say I've got a paling fence down the side of my block, and we've got five fence pales that need to be repaired. If I replace those, that's a repair. If I rip up all the fencing around my block, put up a concrete brickwork fence, that's a capital improvement. Even though the fence looks like it needs to be repaired, you've improved it. It's a capital improvement. So just be careful of what you claim as repairs and what you claim as initial repairs. Because I can guarantee you they are cracking down on that issue. Okay, here's another solid one for you, Joe. I said before the $300 one. You like that one? Well, this one is a next level one, $1,000. So what that means is if you're going to buy an oven for your house or your unit, buy one that costs $990, not one that costs $1,050. Reason, at $990, it can be put into a low value pool and claimed at 37.5%. So that's $370 roughly. At 1050, it's 20% max. So you get $2,000, right? Big difference, but it's only $50 difference between the 1,050 and the 950. And I don't think your tenant cares, but you just got an extra $200 per annum in depreciation for doing not much different, right? Simple, quick hack. So I'll just reiterate those two. If it's one thing I impress on people, apart from all the other stuff, if you've got a choice between microwave of 305 and 295, buy 295. If your oven's 950 and 150, buy 950. It'll save you money.
Solid.
Thank you.
I'm just cautious of time because we got to. Yep. What are some of the core fund? What are some of the heavy hitters? Like because we have a shitload left. Okay. Jesus.
I like that one. Okay, here's one. Here's a heavy hitter. Okay.
Go on.
Okay, ready?
Oh.
So I know people want to take.
It looks more than 20.
Of this one. It's like that photo. So this is just something that I've never really talked about before. But if people are interested in buying like a house land package, which I know you guys don't like, but if they do, this is a quick hack on how to work out what your depreciation is. And you know the purchase price is 500K.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the build cost is 500K. Your year one is going to be 5%, 25 grand. There you go. Year two is going to be 20 grand.
25,000.
You can quickly do the maths just by using Ty's secret takeaway gifts. Ty's quick hack. There you go.
What about year 10?
It'll be. I'll tell you. It's a good question. It'll be about 3% until year 10, and there'll be 2.5% until from year 11 till year 40. So it'll be 3% down to year 10. I just didn't have enough graphics to do that.
Yeah. We're gonna go for so long. Yeah.
There you go. All right.
That's a quality.
All right. Two things. Backdating. So if you're sitting here going, shit, I haven't claimed all my depreciation. The good news is you can go back 2 years. So if you haven't done your tax returns for 10 years, that can be a good thing because you can go back and start from the beginning. But if you are up to date with your tax returns and you're sitting here going, why didn't someone have Tyron on this before? You can amend your returns for 2 years. And finally,
on that though, because can you bring back, because I believe it's only up to the last sort of 3 or 4 years you can amend tax returns, or can you amend beyond that 4 year sort of period? I didn't think you would.
No, I'm saying it depends on the entity and depending on the accountant and ATO. But generally speaking, it's amendment of 2 years. So that's what I'm saying. So if you haven't done your returns for 10 years, that's in your benefit because you're not amending returns, you're doing returns, right? But you only amend returns, right? You only amend returns for a couple of years. It depends on your tax situation and all those other things, whether you've been a good boy or blah, blah, girl, blah, blah, blah. All right, finally, here's a plug. So our fee is tax deductible. There you go. Save the turnover. And it's guaranteed. So we guarantee our clients at least twice the fee, blah, 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 in the first year. But there you go. There's some Ty's top tips.
TTT. Wow. That's what we want. Well, that's a good thing. That's one thing I think that's worthwhile mentioning just from a tax depreciation standpoint is that there are people out there that do tax depreciations. Most of them will say like, well, if you can't get tax depreciation, we just won't do it. So it's like,
absolutely.
Go ask the question, see if you can get it, because if you can, then you're gonna get more worthwhile then. What are some of the little general, because there's a couple of questions in here I think that's worthwhile getting to as well, because I'm just cautious of time. But from a year perspective, like how, I think there was a year, was it 1986, 1989? Like what should we be thinking when we're buying a property from a year perspective?
Okay, that's a good question, Joe. Okay, firstly, so it's after 1987, you can't claim any of the building allowance. But to be honest, I wouldn't look at it I wouldn't look at it from that perspective, like going back to 1990 or whatever. For me personally, I think the sweet spot of investing, if you're a mum and dad investor or something like that, is a property that's about 10 years old. And the reason I say that is you can get enough data to know the comparables, right? For starters, not to do with depreciation, but you can get a good enough data to know what the comparables are. It's very hard in a high-rise block where, it's 6 months old, doesn't mean anything, right? Until there's been enough sales in that block or that area. So 10 years old. The reason why I say 10 years is you can buy something. For me, the best renovation from a value add point plus depreciation point of view is 10 years. And the reason is because a lot of the stuff that's depreciable, like the ovens, carpets, blinds, all that stuff has an effective life of around 10 years. So you can go in there, make those cosmetic $25,000 improvements, rip out the carpets, blinds, have the uplift of value of that with your rental and also hopefully the purchase price. But also that $25,000 of those small loose items is highly depreciable stuff. So you can, of that 25, you might get a $10,000 deduction immediately, right? Because we can write off those blinds. So for me, it's that 10 to 12 years a sweet spot. Apart from the fact you can get the comparables, you'll have the uplift of that cosmetic stuff, the painting, which we all know that is the stuff people walk in and go, oh, that's nice. And then on top of that, you got the depreciable assets that can be written off as well. So those three combinations has always led me to tell people that is the sweet spot you want to look at.
Yeah, love it. Okay, well, let's jump into some of the comments. Anyone that's watching live right now, let's throw them in there because we're not going to cover off too much. Brad has jumped in with a great question. With buying a reno project, I know you have said you're better to rent, it first, but you reno. Oh God. Please use grammar in your questions as well.
You're better to rent it first, but your reno first. Are you still getting it depreciated report done before then after the reno for capital? So when are you getting the depreciation report? Is the
right? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess the first question I'd say is I think I understand what the question is, but I would be looking at a 2-stage report, getting us out beforehand in this case. But if you do a renovation straight away, if you buy a property and do a renovation straight away,
no. So I'm buying an ugly ass property. I'm buying a property that needs carpet, paints, flooring, kitchen, bathroom. I just got it under contract. I've got some quotes during the settlement and unconditional phase. I just settled. What do I do?
You're doing a renovation after?
Yeah. So it needs all of that. Like it's ugly as hell.
Wait till you've done the renovation, then get us out. If you do it straight away, wait till you've done it. If you're doing a renovation like that, wait till you've done it, then get us out. Where I would get us out beforehand is if you bought a 20-year-old property, you have it for a couple of years before you renovate, then get us out, and then we'll come back out after you've done it. Okay, but if you do it straight away, just wait till you finish the round, then get us out, because you can't claim any of that scrapping thing because you did it straight away. Make sense? No.
I'd have to watch it.
So wait, we send you out initially on. So we settled, and then I call you up, and then I send you out, or I do the renovation, then I send you out.
If you've settled and if you're doing a renovation, do the renovation first. Do the renovation.
Okay. Because I've got all my quotes. I've got all my. I've got all the receipts.
And it might depending on the size of it, it might not be worth coming out. You might just give us, if you're only doing a 50,000 reno, right?
Yeah.
You've got the costs. As quantity surveyors, we can only estimate the costs where the costs are unknown. But Joe, if you tell me I've just got a quote from a builder, he's got $50,000, no amount of quantity surveying going out there and looking at what you spent is going to change the claim. It's $50,000, right? You can't get a quantity surveyor out there and go, oh yeah, I think it costs 100, or this one says it costs 80. No, it costs 50. That's what we have to use. Unfortunately,
422.
There used to be a promoter many years ago. And his whole mantra was he'd have seminars and he would tell people to do a renovation, pay cash, and then get a quantity surveyor out, and then don't tell the quantity surveyor that you've done the work, and get a quantity surveyor to make it up. And that was his whole mantra of his bloody seminar. It wasn't good, because then people would come to us and say, well, this is what this guy told me. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Sounds a bit
I think he got caught by one of those governing bodies.
One of them.
Is quantity surveying a dark art?
I want to ask this question.
I've never had that.
What is it? Life. Are we Slytherin? Are we in defense against the dark arts? Are we defending against?
Can I take a photo of that?
I don't know why.
Dark art.
This is an interesting one, because I mean, to me it seems like an obvious answer, because you probably can't depreciate a PPOR because depreciation only because you're claiming. So if it's not an investment, then there's probably nothing to claim, right? But is it that simple?
It is kind of that simple. It's kind of that simple. So yes, you can't depreciate something you're living in, right? However, if you buy something and then you move out, then you can start claiming the depreciation. But you can't. So that happens a lot. A lot of people buy a property, live in it for 6 months, a year, maybe get a government grant, then move out. Happens all the time, right? However, what people need to consider is that because you made it an owner-occupied property for 6 months or a year, you're going to miss out on $50,000 deductions. So you might get that $10,000 grant, but you've just missed out on $50,000 in depreciation. So you need to factor that into the equation of whether is it worthwhile. And I do a lot of talks or where we work with big developers, and I have a stand there sometimes, and I need your report in 6 months' time. I'm living in there for 6 months. And I'm like, do you know you're just going to miss out on $50,000 in depreciation? I know, but I need the grant. But it's just something to consider, that I don't think a lot of people know that they're going to miss out on that when they move out of that property.
That is a good point. I feel like we have the best question here from a nerdy tax depreciation question. I don't know what this means, so maybe you can enlighten us. Do you guys do P50 and P80 Monte Carlos? As far as I know, a Monte Carlo is a biscuit. Can you tell me what
in
this
a city
means?
somewhere in Europe?
I'm so got to Google it though. I have no idea what it's.
Defining P50 and P80 refers to confidence level regarding to the probability of the cost not being exceeded and does not indicate the quantum of cost or proximity to the actual cost realized. That is, P80 is not the cost. Okay, so you don't know what it means. I don't know what it means. You are far smarter than all of us put together, Mr. Whoever put that up. So thank you very much.
That's the most.
That is
That's
in-depth.
Elijah.
Okay, another question. Thanks, Tyron. I've bought a property this year and the tenants are moving out soon. I'm planning to do a renovation. Can I do your scrapping method? Is the tenancy long enough?
So, quick, I'd say yes. Firstly, the property has to be built after 87 for you to claim any of the balancing adjustment. But the fact that you said you've got a tenant in there already, that's a good sign. So, without knowing the age of the property, it provides built after 87. Yes, you can get some scrapping balances there. And as I said before, there's so many hundreds of millions of dollars of deductions that go into the never land because people don't know that this is a thing.
Well, this is rolls in nicely to this question. I ripped out my 40-year-old kitchen, and let's just say it's a 20-year-old kitchen. Well, let's say 40 because it is. I didn't get a quantity surveyor before demo, but I've taken photos. Can I claim based on photos of the original kitchen?
It's a fantastic question. And unfortunately, the answer is no. And the reason the answer is no is not because the quantity surveyor wasn't out there. The fact that you said it's 40 years old already, right?
Yeah.
So good pickup. So because the ATO determines that things like kitchens and tiling only last 40 years. So the fact that it's lasted 40 years left already doesn't mean there's anything left to write off when you remove it, right? But what my argument is that the ATO has been so conservative in what they've determined is going to last for 40 years, it is at the disservice of property investors, right? Because I would recalculate, and I've lobbied on this, is that some things should go back into maybe a 20-year category, like kitchens, like shower screens. Do you really want to have a shower in a shower screen that's been there for 40 years, Joe? Yeah, no, not me. I don't think many shower screens last for 40. I'm certainly not going to live in a place with a shower screen or the toilet's 40 years old, I can tell you now. But the ATO has determined those items last for 40 years, but they don't often in reality.
Well, let's go back to the question because what if it was 20 years? So I just did a depreciation. I just knocked my place down, a kitchen that's 20 years old. And I've done it. I've done my tax return. That was 2 years ago. I've got photos. Can I claim? Can I go back and
absolutely. If you've got, especially if you've got photos of the prior work. But the good thing is these days, Joe and Jeff,
photos of the new work
is that on RP data, there's so many photos, and there's even timestamped now. You can see that this is what the kitchen looked like in 1993. This is what it looked like in 2005. Blah blah blah, which is fantastic. And as time moves on, that's just going to get better and better for people like us in looking at what places used to be like, etc., etc. So we get so much information from places like that, determining what the stages of construction can be, because there can be 3 different stages of construction. We use things like aerial footage to determine when buildings are being built, but RP data is a gold mine from a historical point of view of looking at properties.
So just to clear it up, I've got a house. It's 20, 25, 30 years old. I just knocked the old kitchen out. I didn't get a depreciation rule. I didn't really care because whatever, that was last year. But now you're saying I can go back and say, I still have 20 years left of depreciable life. I want my 20 years worth of value. Let's say it's a $50,000 construction. So I still have $25,000 to claim.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, Joe.
That's ridiculous.
That's a scrapping report, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And even the only thing I caveat on that, if you remember, you can only amend returns for 2 years. So you told me, Joe, I did that 5 years ago.
Last year,
right? But if it's 2 years, absolutely, and we can look at historical photos and all that kind of stuff, and you'll be surprised. Like even your ingoing inspection would have so many photos, right? So we can kind of work with those things. And the HO accepts what we've done. We've done over 300,000 reports, never had one client knock back. Pretty good stat.
There you go. Gee, that's 100% claim. I want to sort of finish this off with a quirky, fun kind of question. What is your favorite part of quantity surveying?
Saving people money, no brainer. I love helping people. I think I've mentioned to you before that I saw my father lose all his money when I was growing up, and when I was 13, he was he became a cripple, and he got retired from his job, and he invested all his money in a company called Estate Mortgage, which was they pretended to be a bank back in the late 80s, but in reality, he invested all his super into this fund, and when the interest rates went to 17%, it fell down like a house of cards, and he lost pretty much everything. He lost, I think he got 6 cents back in the dollar back in 1989, and the stroke that he had didn't kill him, but losing all his money did. So I have been on a bit of I have loved saving people money, and hopefully someone here today I've saved 1 or 2 cents for someone, and so yeah, my passion has been saving people money, Jeff, and I love it. I love delving into the property tax law and finding that next loophole for someone. And I used to stay awake all night. Like that's a 1%er that I've talked about before. Just finding that next little thing I can and passing that on. And that's I know actually, it's a session, Jeff, but I'd love it.
This is a question that's just come up. What is your favorite 1% of, maybe not of all time, but maybe of all, whatever. What is your favorite 1% of all time that's kind of keeping you up and exciting you? Because
I kind of thanks for that question, whoever. I do love that.
That's Elijah.
That was the
good question, but I guess that 1% would be I've got to think about this one. It is that scrapping component, but it's also I love it when I find property deals or where I look at property deals and I just see, oh my God, how did you do that? I know that's not 1%, but it's like. I love seeing those transactions because we get so many transactions across my desk. I'm like, wow, that's cool. But to answer the question, the 1%, I love the scrapping is a no-brainer 1%er. It is such a quick, fast fix. The $300 and the $1,000, they're a no-brainer for people, right? If someone is listening to this and they're in Harvey Norman next time and they're buying a microwave and they go, oh look, there's one for $310. Oh, and they go to the partner, oh no, let's get the $291, and I'm in their brain. I'm happy with tonight. So they're the 1%ers.
Well,
people are loving it. Like there's so much enthusiasm. I'm very surprised about the.
Why are you surprised?
Free money. Free money, Jeff. What are you talking about?
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, free money, mate. This is unreal. I love your energy.
I know you guys don't do discount. Am I allowed to put a link where members get a 10% discount?
You get an opportunity. How? Ask the question.
Give us the run through. What is this? The link? Give us a run through. How do we learn? How do we get more Tyron in our life?
This is a link here which you can click on, and then it says get 10% discount for Oz Property Forum members.
Oh, you created it as a special link? Yeah.
Yes.
Cheeky devil. Oh,
is that wrong or bad?
No, I mean it's
okay.
It's nice.
Let me just drop it in the thing.
That makes us feel a little special, doesn't it?
Yeah, just for us.
I thought I'd personalize it.
Yeah, it's got Oz Property there. That feels good. Oh, by the way, we don't get any kickbacks, commissions, or referrals. So we messed up here. Why are we not getting a kickback, commission, or referral?
You can. We'll talk later.
Yeah, roll it back into the client, mate. Roll it back into the client. But this is the crazy thing. What I love about, I think why you're so excited, I mean, just from being an outsider looking in, the reason you're so excited about this is because this is literally free money for people. Your fee gets paid off, and if it doesn't get paid off, I'm not bothering. But this is free money that people can get as property investors. And I think there's levels to investing. The first level is kind of getting your feet wet into the investing game, and then it's like getting a couple of assets under your belt and being like, oh shit, you have a lot of value and a lot of potential that you can unlock here. And if you're not doing these depreciation schedules, if you're not asking these kind of questions, you're leaving thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Jesus.
Quiddy, one more question, because I think apparently this is important.
Your show, mate.
Can you please? Sorry, I interrupted, but I wanted to. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Can you please mention the adjustments for capital works claimed when selling an IP in relation to what was claimed as a rental deduction? Does that make sense to you, Tyron?
Absolutely does, and it's a very good question. It's the one question that I get asked every time. It's where I mentioned it before. So basically, what this question is that when you claim, it is a complicated answer. But when you claim the building allowance of a property, you have to factor it back into the capital gains equation. So I'll try and simplify this. Say I bought a property for $500,000 and I claimed $20,000 in building allowance, and I sold the property for $600,000, right? So I made a $100,000 profit. When you sell the property, you've claimed $20,000 in building allowance. You have to pay capital gains tax on the 500 to the 600, which is 100 grand. You have to pay capital gains tax on 120 grand. However, the government says you can halve that. You get the halve, provided you held it for more than a year. You get the capital gains discounting. So the $20,000 in capital works allowance, you're only paying capital gains tax on 10. So you get the benefit of that on what you've claimed. You also get the timing benefit because you've claimed that depreciation throughout your owning it. So there's two benefits of why you would do it, depreciation. One is the cash flow benefit whilst you own it. And two, when or if you sell your profit and if you make a capital gain, well, whatever you claimed in the building allowance is only factored in halfway. Now, where it gets more complicated is when you buy a brand new property or a commercial property. So I just talked about the building allowance then, the brickwork, concrete, how you factor it into your capital gains. The other part of the equation is your plant equipment, the ovens, dishwashers, right? So say I bought a commercial office for whatever, it doesn't matter the price, but within there was a $1,000 oven. If I depreciated that down to $500, I would sell that at the written down value, no implications on my capital gain. So I bought the oven for $1,000, sold it at $500. That was assumed the written down value. So it has no implications on it. You just get that as a deduction. It's different with the building allowance, and that's why it is complicated. So the moral of the story, brand new ovens, dishwashers, commercial, doesn't make any difference to your capital gains tax. It's when you're claiming the building allowance that you have to factor it in. But I've just told you two ways of why it's beneficial. One is your cash flow while you're holding it because you get those deductions. Two, if you never sell a property, doesn't matter. But three, if you do sell it, you halve whatever you've claimed and put that on to your capital gains equation. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
It does, actually. You explain that concept very well.
I know, because it is very complicated. You know, I mean, often I get, thank you, very passionate. I am very passionate. I hope you've noticed, but I do. Great.
I'm going to contact you tomorrow. We'll use this code and make us feel special.
That was, I didn't think we were going to get this far. 2 hours. I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to talk. And I've got things that I've been thinking we're going to talk about. We didn't get to half of them.
We didn't get half of it. We had all this stuff planned. Mate, this has been an incredible session. I think that your enthusiasm and energy shines through. You've been doing this for how many years? Like 30? Like,
long time. 23.
Like, so I started uni in 88, 89. So I've been doing this nearly 36 years or something.
Jesus. And you still care this much.
But it's probably depreciation. Isn't that weird, Joe?
Yes. I mean, that's strange. But it works, mate. It bloody works.
Mate, I've done all right out of this industry, so I like to give back. So it's all good.
You're 1% of property depreciation.
So, okay, we'll reach out, jump on the link there. We'll throw it in the comments. We'll throw it in the YouTube, and you can get a 10% discount. But I think that, I guess anyone that has an investment property, it's worthwhile having the conversation, throw your details in and have that chat, because if you can get a depreciation, you can save on tax, you should be doing it, because otherwise it's just money that's going in the bin.
And whether that's through WB or another company, just have the conversation, I suppose.
Yeah.
As long as they're not charging you for it up front.
Correct. Awesome.
Very
done.
True. Tyron,
thanks very much.
Epic session. Thank you very much, guys. Let's go get a property
on. Thanks for having me on, and keep up the great work, guys. I love the forum, and hopefully I'll see you around soon.
Thanks. Sure you will. Buy a property. Let's get it depreciated.
Let's get it depreciated.